Welcome to Mind Over MS, a podcast from Energy Over Matter. I'm your host, Dana Wilder, and here we explore energy medicine, nervous system regulation, and mind-body healing through lived experience, education, and practical tools. Welcome, fellow seekers of truth and beauty, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mind Over MS podcast. Today, we are going to be answering the question as, why is it that you've done all the right things, checked all the right boxes, but still haven't reached the goals that you've set for yourself in healing and ended up in a place of wellness, wholeness, and balance? And so before we move into answering these questions and outlining a framework of true root cause healing, let's just take a moment to check in with our intention and with our energy. So with that, everybody just taking a deep breath in. And as we exhale, dropping our expectations, our burdens, our worries, along with our shoulders, any tension in the body, as we get ready to receive information and group healing. So I'm Dana Wilder, your host, and I came to this because of my own journey with multiple sclerosis. And the layers of healing that I discovered along the way looked very different than the process I started when I first was diagnosed. And this led me into becoming a yoga teacher, which ultimately I discovered through that the 5 Koshas of healing. And the Koshas necessarily aren't laid out as a framework for healing, but this is still an insight that I used in order to elevate my own healing. But it didn't come all at once, and it didn't come in one day or an epiphany. It came through working through each process, getting some gains, and then plateauing, and then figuring out, what do I need to do to get further along my healing journey? And I discovered that piece by piece, and it unfolded the way it needed to. And for all of us, our journey is going to look different, and how we come about these realizations and self-discovery. My purpose with you today is just to give you this overarching framework and roadmap so that maybe you can jump in at some point where you haven't discovered this modality of healing, or even become aware that necessarily you're missing one of the layers of what it takes to heal as a holistic being that is multidimensional. So to just start then to explain, what does the 5 koshas look like? And I'm going to give a little caveat here, is I don't want to become too technical or to say things which then make it seem unapproachable or unattainable for people. I will still, though, use these Sanskrit yoga words and then follow it up with their plain language meaning. And the reason I do that is not to alienate anybody or make it difficult to follow. It's because my personal belief is that words have power. They are like casting a spell. When we spell words, when we speak them, that brings things into being, into frequency, thought, and intention. And so not only are we using the words that were originally used to denote these and provide a symbol for the meaning that we're trying to obtain, I also find it as an honor to those that came before us. The Sanskrit language that was written so beautifully, that has been passed on down the lines. I find it as a way to honor that tradition. So the 5 koshas really just mean the 5 layers of the body. So the first layer being the physical. And I'll just give you the framework to begin with. So we start in the physical body, we move to the energy body, the mental body, the wisdom or intellect body, and we finally end with the bliss body. And when I wrote my book, I did write them in this sequence, and not because I believe that this is a ladder or a protocol which needs to be followed step by step, but because this is how I came to understand these layers. And I feel like for the way most of us living in a Newtonian, materialistic worldview, it's almost necessary to approach it in this sequence, not because that makes it more true, but because it makes it more understandable and it makes it unfold in a way that is more in line with where some of us are currently on our journey. So the physical body is called the Anamaya Kosha, and the ana meaning like food or sustenance, and the kosha is like a layer or a sheath. So the Anamaya kosha is the physical sustenance of our body. It is what we normally think of as what we are. Like most of us think that we are this body. And, I will challenge that right from the beginning that even though we are talking about a physical body here, we need to reframe the way we even see a physical body. And this is, unfolding right now as quantum science and neuroscience is starting to prove the things that we didn't always ascribe to before in Western traditional science and medical system, which is consciousness is primary. So we are actually a body contained in a mind instead of a mind living within a body. And that seems like a paradoxical statement, but what it really means is it is the consciousness and the energy and the vital force that is creating or holding the container of the body, as opposed to that we are just a body that just happens to have a processing capacity of a brain that makes some kind of personality and guides us through life. It is really going backwards and seeing everything in a new light where our inner consciousness or divinity is primary. So even though we're going to talk about the physical body here, we are reframing some way in which we see the physical body. So this very first layer happens to be the most fundamental in the sense that this is where we usually start, this is where we usually focus on, and usually where we fail the most. I recently put out a survey on a social media platform about which layer most people wanted to focus on, and hands down, people were worried most about their physical body. So, this is where most of us start their journey. And I too started here in the Anamaya Kosha, the physical body. And so when I first got diagnosed with MS, I thought, okay, I'm going to try to improve my diet. I'm going to start doing yoga. I'm going to do physio or any kind of occupational rehab, certain things that were going to be in line with treating the physical body. And I think even those tools were already gearing towards more alternative and energetic, as opposed to the biochemistry, which the big pharma would espouse, which is where let's kill the immune system by killing the B cells and the T cells, and that will stop your body from further attacking itself in an autoimmune attack. So, and I'm not here to give medical advice or to pass judgment on anybody for whatever approach they feel. In my personal case, I felt like doing a more holistic treatment was going to be aligned with me. But nonetheless, I still did it only at the physical level. And I got rid of gluten, I got rid of dairy, I reduced sugar and seed oils, I added in more organics, only pasture raised meat, I did supplements, and I started doing yoga. And at this point, though, the yoga was really more just about the asanas or the physical poses, which is where most of us think that yoga really is. And that's where I started. And I will say that I made a lot of gains there. So I improved quite a bit with these tools. And I recommend that we all do these things because regardless of when we get to the spiritual layer of our being, the truth is that our spirit is residing in a 3D world. And in a 3D world, we have time, space, and a physical body. And we have to follow the governing rules, which still says we need sunlight, we need water, we need food, we need all of these things that are going to nourish and sustain this physical body, whether illusionary or not. So you need to still take care of your physical body. And I'm never going to suggest that those things are not going to be important. It's just that we're going to move beyond there to integrate other areas. So the next thing in my own healing journey and the next, and it is funny how these things in my own life actually paired very well with this framework, which is why the first time I read about the Koshas, it wasn't like learning, it was remembering for me. It was like, oh, this makes sense. And it's so matched with my personal journey. So the next thing, and I'll give you maybe a bit of a story for myself, is I was still very much stuck in the physical body and I had healed a bit, but I was still at a point with my MS where I was needing people to drive me, take care of me. And I had gone to do a treatment in a place which was hydrotherapy, but there was a PEMF sign, which is pulse magnetic field therapy. I'd never heard of that. And so I was invited to go in and watch the owner of the company who was on the machine. And in a perfect synchronicity, she had the same autoimmune disease my father has, ankylosing spondylitis. Yet her energy that radiated out from her, as well as the way she stood tall, like a yoga teacher, a ballerina. And then in contrast to my father, who had only followed the biochemistry model, they look like two completely different diseases in people. So I was instantly intrigued and I started. And that PEMF device, which I won't go into in detail here because we'll cover it in future episodes, put so much new energy into my body. And that new energy gave me more stamina to do yoga, to do more of my physio, to be able to stand for longer, to cook healthier meals for myself, to do all of these things that were still in the biochemistry realm, and the physical realm, but I had the energy now to do them. And that was beautiful. And so it put me into this whole new energy body, which is the pranamaya kosha. And prana meaning, a lot of us think of it as breath work in yoga or breath control, but prana is bigger than just the breath. It is the vital life force. So in Chinese medicine, when we think of qi, right, it is this thing that animates us, that comes into the body with our first breath and leaves when we pass. And that's the thing that holds the whole system and energizes it. So I learned now that, well, it's not just this machine that can give me energy. What else can I work on? And knowing the word prana as a yoga teacher, I was like, well, breath work. So I now started doing other meditations and breath work in an effort to create my own internal energy. And I got a little bit better. And that helped me along my journey to be able to start researching more, to start looking into new paths of healing. But I found at a certain point that even though I had this energy, the problem was that it wasn't sustaining. And I wasn't regenerating my own energy. I was falling flat again and needing these external things to recharge my battery. So I knew there was going to be something more. And, we all will eventually get to this realization in our healing journey that emotions and our thought patterns, our beliefs and our limiting beliefs and our conditioning is creating energy leaks. So not only is toxic food, maybe virus, illness, things in the body causing an energy leak on the physical level, but when we have mental stress and when we have dysregulated nervous system patterns, that causes energy leaks in the energy body. So even if you're putting energy in, you're draining the energy again with these thought loops and nervous system that's always scanning the environment, waiting for the next thing to happen. So this brings us to the Manamaya Kosha, which is the mental body. And so when I got into the mental body, this is where we all need to start doing, a little bit of dissolution of our ego, doing some shadow work, reviewing maybe our ACE, our adverse childhood events, where, and I'll link to that in the show notes, where there's certain events that have happened to us when we're under the age of 7, which are too big for us to handle at the time. So they create trauma in the body, and they're very linked to people later in life developing autoimmune disease, cancer, having shorter telomeres, which is an indication that our life expectancy might be a little bit less. Now, I want to be careful to caveat here because I don't like to give labels and necessarily information that's going to make you feel more limited or scared. The point of this is not to have another thing that we're worrying about, but to just give us information, because sometimes awareness is a place that we need to start in order to make changes or new actions, thoughts, and beliefs in our life. So when we deal with the mind, this is when I really started getting more beyond just the energy devices, but into hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, parts integration. So there's so many things to do here. And again, I don't like to place judgments or anything on what other people are doing, but I found, at least for myself, that talk therapy was limiting, and it's sometimes maybe even re-traumatizing. And if not re-traumatizing, it gave me like a victim story that I told over and over and over, and it becomes more solidified in the neural pathways, because whatever fires together wires together. So when we constantly talk about our trauma patterns, it's almost like we're reinforcing those loops in the brain. And so this is where hypnosis is so valuable, because we come into the subconscious part, which is running the real show, and it's sometimes under our level of awareness, and we really start to work on repatterning those things. And then neurolinguistic programming coming in as the kind of executive functioning coaching, where we're really now looking at like our outward behaviors and reframing things, how we look at things that happened to us in the past, and anchoring in new beliefs, and collapsing maybe some of the things in the past that we used to get triggered by. And that helps us to calm this mental part of our body. And each one of these topics will delve more into detail in future episodes, so just enough to just kind of introduce these ideas here as we develop this framework of healing. But even once we go beyond just the mental body, which we can think of kind of as like the data collection. So all of the information, the books we've read, the people we've interacted with, the news stories we're watching, all of these things we're picking up and over life to create these avatars and the characters we're playing. But what kind of even goes beyond that? So then we get into the next layer, which is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, or the intellect and bliss body. And this is where we're not collecting more data here. We're making meaning. So this is really now where we're learning how to discern, to really look at our instincts and our intuition. We're really starting to make space. And if when we were dealing with our mental body, we started practices like meditation and mindfulness practices, and we're starting to calm our nervous system, it becomes much easier to discern and to become intuitive as to what our higher self might be trying to communicate to us, because we've made this space to really listen more than gain. Because this part of the layer of healing is not so much about new techniques or new information. It is about deciding what felt real to us. And I would say the difference almost between wisdom and just like information is, there might be things you've heard before, like these little adages or these saying proverbs, things where somebody says it and it's so simple and so true, and it resonates so deeply with us, and it kind of stays there because we feel this to be true. And we didn't need someone to explain it to us. We didn't need to uncover it or fact check it. We heard it, and it fell right into us and was like, I know that to be true. And so this is a place where we've gotten to, because we've taken some of the layers that were, veils on top of us out. And as we get rid of toxic food and, replace it with healthy food, and then when we start to take some of the energy drains out, like maybe healthier living, like less Wi-Fi and less negative news cycles, and we add in some more coherent frequencies. Maybe we're doing sound healing or frequency devices, or, we're meditating, we're clearing, we're making space for these things. That ability to discern what is real and what isn't and what's true for us really solidifies and becomes more clear. But those things are so subtle that when you have so many competing frequencies and toxins, whether that's toxins in your food, in your environment, with people, with your own internal thoughts, those toxins and those layers make it very difficult to hear the subtle signals of true self. And so as we remove these things to live in this kosha becomes easier. And this leads us to the final one, which is our bliss body, or the Amandamaya kosha. And the bliss body is, yes, it feels nice to be here. Yes, it is a blissful, happy place of joy and radiance. But when we finally really make it to bliss, it's because we've understood that it's not a destination and it's not even just this fleeting moment. It is us. So we are the love, we are the light, and it emanates out of us. It is us. And it's the thing that connects us to everything else around us, the plants, the people, to ourselves, to source, to the unified field. And we don't have to look at this in terms of religion. This can just be that we are connected to Mother Earth, or that we are connected to the unified field of consciousness, the morphic field of what it is to be human. This is when we connect to these things and we live in this state. This is where true healing, I would say, finally starts to integrate and come together. Because at least in my own journey, when I was working on overcoming my body, overcoming my energy blocks, overcoming my own mental blocks, I was overcoming. I was pushing against, I was resisting. And it's why I could never fully get all the way in my healing, because whenever we resist, whatever we resist persists, as they say. And when we are battling against these parts of ourselves or our body, that resistance is fear, it is disbelief, it is mistrust, it is a burden, it's heavy, it's this energy of like, I must do these things, I need to do, and I used to be this way. I need to meditate, check. I need to eat my organics, check. I needed to be mindful, check. I needed to practice yoga today, check. And each one of these things, I felt like I was doing them instead of being me and just being happy. And when we can find that connection to everything and we start to understand the oneness and that we are part of source, we are part of the beauty of this human experience and beyond in the cosmos, we are just a fractal piece of the greater whole. And when we start to understand that, all of a sudden we can find bliss even in the suffering. So even when we're at our lowest point, we can find gratitude and we can find love and we can find meaning, because that suffering is not just suffering anymore. It is a signal, it is communication. So if your body is struggling right now, it is because your body is trying to communicate something to you and your mind to start taking actions that are in line with this higher bliss body and your purpose. And your mind is speaking in language, and it's right now it's what's communicating between us. But your body doesn't speak in language. Your body speaks in sensations and emotions. And sometimes those emotions and those signals are painful. Sometimes it is sad. Sometimes we feel upset. Sometimes we're in grief. Sometimes it's loss. Sometimes our body responds by being in pain or shutting down or turning numb or whatever, it's a headache, whatever these things are. This is now an invitation for you to listen to those signals, make meaning of them, and then take the right type of action. Because once we've been, then we can do, and then we go to where we need to have what we want. But we have to just be in the moment and listen. We have to make space for those subtle signals to be heard. Now, in my case, I did not listen and I disconnected for decades of my life due to living in trauma response all the time. It was never safe in the environment I was in to be in my body or to have any emotional needs or to process my needs, because I was always on eggshells worrying about everybody else and then trying to please and be perfect to keep the chaos at bay. And so my body, because my nervous system only spoke in this triggered loud state, my body had to match that by being equally loud in its signal. And I hope for all of you that it doesn't get to the point where your body screams, because I mean, it would be nice if we could have a gentle signal like, I'm feeling a little tired today, maybe I'll go nap. Or when the phone rings and I see that person calling and I feel tired instantly, maybe that's a sign that this is an energy drain for me. And let's move towards something that I find fulfilling. And so we start to see these subtle signals and we take action. Well, it's still just a small signal. But for those of us that we've already, our nervous systems and our bodies already speak in this loud language, we can still dial that back. We can still calm it down. We can still make space. And then, in part of making meaning with my own MS journey, I came to realize that whenever I start going off my path, whenever my MS worsens or a symptom starts to reemerge or get worse, I listen right away now and I go, okay, that means I'm taking on too much. Somebody else's drama is becoming my own. I said yes when I should have said no, and I course correct. And so even those signals, when they come back again, instead of feeling like an ultimate failure, and oh, I've done it wrong or I screwed up, or again, judging and being harsh on myself, I'm just going to step back, take a little moment to reflect and self-awareness and say, okay, I've allowed that emotional pattern to come up and I'm following it and I shouldn't. And because I've already hopefully learned that energetic pattern, can recognize it, and I can move away from it quicker than I could before, which will then tell my body a safety signal to say you can relax on the symptoms because I've respected you, I've heard you, and I've taken the immediate action needed to resolve whatever it was you were trying to communicate to me. And this is how we end up when we're in the ultimate state of bliss, that we don't have to be perfect. It's not as saying that, oh, you take all of these layers and we get to this place and we live in samadhi or nirvana and this enlightenment every day of our life. No, because we still live in a world where we're navigating new stressors, right? That even when we think that we've solved one problem, new ones will present themselves because life is tragic and beautiful. So, you might lose your job in the future, another time to grieve, or, there might be a new, world event that upsets you. Whatever it is, they can be big, they can be small, but when those things happen, because we understand our connection to something bigger than ourselves, and we also understand that all these things that are happening are for us, not to us. And when we can gain meaning and purpose even out of those moments, it is so much easier to stay in the bliss body. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that we talk about these things in layers, and my own journey very much so took me up this like it was a ladder. It is not. We can jump in at any place along the way. And we, even though it does feel like the way we live in a materialistic world, that it's almost necessary to move up these layers, if you start in bliss, I would almost argue that when you live always in this frequency of love and light, sometimes if you get the other things wrong occasionally as you move down into the denser layers of your body, they'll be less thrown off and less disrupted when the overarching frequency is staying like high vibes, right? When you're up there and you're really like living in this place where you come to realize all is well and this too shall pass. And you can never really feel lonely when you understand how connected you are to everything. And that if you understand this universal and infinite soul and energy that you're part of, that even this physical life you're living right now is only temporary too, it kind of separates you from attaching so much to the pain in the suffering while you're in it. And then, those symptoms and the things that are in the body and in the mind, they release a little quicker. We don't really hold on so much to them. So, I would invite you, as you think about what we've covered in this episode, is, which layer of your body and being, and which kosha have you spent the most time focusing on? and which one maybe is missing in the equation of your healing. And that maybe which one then needs to be focused on a little bit more. And maybe for some of us, we have, only ever worked on trying to obtain bliss. And in doing so, we've become hedonistic because we think that following just carnal pleasures of life is what will give us at least temporary happiness. So, in chasing this kind of happiness all the time, maybe we drink too much, maybe we shop too much, maybe we're trying to fill ourselves to give ourselves this bliss, and in doing so, have damaged our body. Or maybe we have not jumped in at the mental body, and maybe we have spend so much time only worrying about our physical body doing the right diet and the right workout routine, but we've ignored how much the emotions and our thoughts are holding us back from true healing because we've failed to see the connection between what we think and what we feel and how it manifests physically in our body. So, I would just invite you to start to have a look at where are your strengths, what are you doing well at, maybe what are areas where you need to focus on a little bit more. And then to start to really soften and to just allow a little bit more, to stop trying to just do and achieve and just allow yourself to be with wherever you are right now. And that includes your emotions and your physical state. So if your body hurts right now, just sometimes be okay with it, hold it, and just allow it to communicate whatever it needs to. And if you have an emotion and it's not a positive one, there is no good and bad ones. They're just emotions. You just allow it to move through you, and then you just allow the next one to come to. So there's a moment to cry, but when you're done crying, laugh if the next thing that happens is funny. And don't feel like a crazy person, just let the emotions come because they're all beautiful and they all serve their own purpose. They're all just messengers again to help you move towards or away from things on the path of living. And so anybody that is interested in diving deeper into the koshas, I do have a new book, Unlearn Disease, Relearn Wellbeing, available on Amazon. And you can also follow at energyovermatter.com, where I have a free healing circle that meets on the second Wednesday of every month. So you can go to the site and you can join up, and maybe I'll see you inside the circle. But otherwise, I want all of you to have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over MS. For more episodes, guided meditations, and healing resources, follow Energy Over Matter and subscribe wherever you are listening. Until next time, this is Dana Wilder signing off. Have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste.